Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally Ann here, and welcome to a very special Women's Health episode. It's Women's Health Week, and I really love the theme this year. It's Say Yes to You, to speak up, to check in, and to prioritise your health and well-being. And that's something I certainly hear a lot of in our community, that I want to improve my health, but I just don't have time, or I feel too overwhelmed, or I have too many other commitments. I just don't find the time for me. So what I want to do in this episode is encourage you to pause, to think about where you are today with your level of health and happiness, where you've been perhaps the last 12 months, and where you'd really love to be without the overwhelm, without the guilt, without that long list of things to do so you can actually achieve it. And I'm going to be focusing in on something quite specific in this episode because it's something that I have seen emerging in our community. But first of all, I want to reflect on where I was last Women's Health Week. I was in Western Australia in the Margaret River region. My sister and I had just found out the week prior that our mum, who was in hospital after having another stroke, wasn't to go home and live alone. It was a big change for us, not perhaps an unexpected one, but it was the timing. I was away, my sister was away as well. And even though I was walking daily, my husband and I were doing the Cape to Cape walk in Western Australia, as I said, in the Margaret River area. And on average, we were walking 18 kilometres a day, but I still couldn't sleep at night. I was worried. I was stressed about everything that my sister and I had to organise to take care of Mum. There were a lot of decisions that were going to have to be made. By the end of September, we had prepared her house for sale, we had sold it, and we had decided that Mum would move interstate and live with my husband and I until a room became available at my preferred healthcare facility. At this stage, I was feeling tired because I hadn't been sleeping for weeks, and my sister and I had obviously been working long days to get Mum's house prepared, and also reflecting whether the right decision had been made for Mum to actually move interstate. So all of this was happening, and I was trying to steeply learn the aged care system. And it's frustrating, it's complicated, it doesn't allow for all your personal anomalies in the situation. Looking back, I could have reduced my stress by being a bit more accepting of the process, but I'm a curious person. I like to understand why, things happen, and sometimes they don't make sense. But as we all know, life's like that. It doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always seem fair. So by the end of October, I was really feeling exhausted, and I'd say I had dropped from nearly 100% energy in my tank to about 40%. Definitely by Christmas, I was running at 40%. So I realised I had to start prioritising my own health and well-being and take care of myself. And I did it gradually. I was fortunate. I had a toolkit. I knew what worked for me. And I had also knew that I had to be really realistic of my expectations of what I actually could achieve, how much time I had, and especially how much energy I had. Because too often I hear women say, I'm doing all these things for my health and I just feel so tired. And it's that old saying, you're burning the candle at both ends. So for me, it was introducing my daily yoga practice. that first 20 minutes in the morning was mine again, and I made sure it happened every day. And then I treated myself to a weekly bushwalk. By doing that, I felt like I was gaining some control in a healthcare system or an aged care system for my mum that could give me no certainty about anything. And that's what I had to do. And moving into the new year, I got sick, not surprisingly. I had to miss the New Year's celebrations in Sydney. But I accepted that and thought I just have to invest in my health and well-being at the moment. We were really fortunate. A room became available for Mum in mid-January. She's really happy where she's living. She has care, support, community, and I'm forever grateful that we could get her into my preferred location for her ongoing care. For the next 6 months or so, I just kept checking in with myself to see how I was going. I was getting closer to 100% me again, but realised that when something unexpected happened or a challenge arose, that I was still feeling a bit overwhelmed. That's very much my signal for feeling stress, is that feeling of overwhelm. And in today's episode, I'm going to be providing a training really on recognizing stress, because this is what I have found that many women don't realize, is that you're trying to invest in your health and well-being without knowing that you've got a background of stress, and even your efforts to improve your health and well-being could be contributing to your stress. So I hope you can pause, and if you are driving and listening along today, that's totally fine. But it is like a semi-workshop today, because I really want you, as I said, to pause, reflect on what you can do for your self-care. And I want to reassure you that my definition of self-care is more about having an attitude to taking care of yourself, like wearing a hat outside and sunscreen to protect yourself from the sun. That's an act of self-care. So as I said, it's not a long list of things to do for yourself. It's really about taking every opportunity to take care of yourself.
So, as I've already shared, I am really aligned with the theme for Women's Health Week this week. Say yes to you, to speak up, check in, and prioritise your health and well-being. If I sound a little bit different compared to the beginning, I started this episode sitting in the sun outdoors. I'm now back inside so I can share this week's episode content, which, as I mentioned, is really like a mini workshop. So stay with me for the next 30 minutes or so as I help you to actually say yes to yourself and prioritise your health and well-being. To maintain healthier eating seems so easy. You just have to follow the rules, but it's something that trips women up time and time again. It nearly becomes a source of stress itself. And today I want to uncover the symptoms of stress that we may not even recognize. And being under stress could be having a big impact on how we eat and our health and well-being. So if you have an overeating habit, could it be due to stress? Do you recognize stress in yourself? We're going to cover the common symptoms of stress today and how stress impacts our eating. Most importantly, ways to reduce stress and how it all starts with self-care, the small steps that matter. Don't get overwhelmed, don't get drawn into things that are going to overwhelm you, especially when it comes to well-being, because I really believe, unfortunately, there's an industry now that actually creates stress by promising well-being because of these massive overhauls and makeovers that are encouraged. So, when it comes to recognizing stress, we're not always that good at knowing that we're under stress. And my first experience of this was as a participant at a wellbeing workshop, and the facilitator had paired us off for a particular activity, and each of us was going to help the other one release a source of stress, help them through a traumatic event or something that they were struggling with. When it came to my turn, I thought, I'm feeling okay. There's really not much that I'm unhappy about at the moment, which is a wonderful place to be. But the facilitator, who knew me very well, said to my partner for this activity, help her release some work stress. I had got so used to carrying stress from work that I wasn't even aware of it. And that was so similar for Krisha, one of my clients. She had a mid afternoon chocolate craving, and it didn't matter where she stored the chocolate, she would seek it out in the afternoon. And it wasn't until she reflected on her reasons for eating and we discussed what her driver for eating could be that she realized that it was the work stress, deadlines coming in for the day, and so forth. So, by applying some mindfulness techniques, Krisha was able to reduce that source of stress and reduce her eating of chocolate due to stress. Krisha still continues to eat chocolate, but not for reasons related to stress. So, I want to start delving into the common symptoms of stress to help you understand what you might be going through at the moment if you're not aware. And bear with me because I've got 52 different symptoms of stress I'm going to work through. And the first group are related to physical symptoms. And it can be headaches, backaches, tight muscles, neck and shoulder pain, jaw tension, muscle cramps and spasms, and nervous stomach. It's kind of what I call a sensitive digestive system. And that was one of my earliest recognizable symptoms of stress. I would get irritable bowel like symptoms if I was worried about something or I was stressed about something. So it becomes a little bit more difficult to identify stress as a factor when you may think you just have a sensitive digestive system, or you may even think that you have irritable bowel, not realizing that stress could be adding to those symptoms. Any sensation of pain in the body could be related to stress. But of course, those symptoms I've been through, like the headaches and the aches and pains, they could be related to any other number of reasons. You could have a headache because you're tired or you need your reading glasses adjusted. You might have some joint or muscle pain due to exercise or if you have arthritis. So it's not always easy to identify that we are under stress. Other physical symptoms include nausea, insomnia, fatigue, poor circulation or symptoms of poor circulation like cold hands and feet, tightness or pressure in the head, high blood pressure, diarrhea. And some of these symptoms overlap those that women expect in midlife going through perimenopause, that transition to menopause. So again, I'm saying stress could be lurking in the background and you're not aware of it. Other physical symptoms include skin conditions, allergies, teeth grinding, digestive upsets like cramping or bloating, stomach pain, even ulcers, the opposite of diarrhea, constipation, and hypoglycemia. So, a great range of symptoms can be related to stress. And this is why I really encourage you, and I encourage all of my clients to be mindful of what is happening in your body from day to day, to notice these differences because they are important, especially changes to your digestive system. Let your doctor know if you see any marked changes over a period of time, and even those sudden changes that can happen as well. Other physical symptoms are appetite changes, persistent colds, flus. You kind of get over one and then you get another one. And I certainly experienced that early in my management career. A lot of stress, a lot of learning happening, and not really pacing myself appropriately as I adjusted to my new job role. Sweating more than normal can be a sign of stress. Heart palpitations, where your heart beats rapidly or pounds even when you're not exercising, you're at rest. I've had that one as well. It's quite frightening, actually, the heart palpitations, and that can be related to anxiety conditions as well. Maybe you've noticed that that sip of wine at the end of the day is now a couple of glasses or more. Maybe you're smoking more cigarettes, or perhaps there's other drugs involved when you feel nervous. So, noticing these different physical symptoms makes us realize that, oh my goodness, if I have more than one of these, then I wonder if it is related to stress. When we look at the physical impact of chronic stress, where you've got that stress running in the background all the time, there has been so much research to show that the increase in stress hormone cortisol drives us to want to eat fatty and sugary foods. So it starts to help us understand that when we feel stressed, we might be inclined to reach for those foods. And I must say, a lack of sleep can also increase our cortisol levels and also create those same drivers to eat sweet and fatty foods. Looking at the psychological symptoms of stress, we've got anxiety, depression, confusion, or that spaciness where you just don't feel grounded. You might be more fearful than usual. You might have some compulsive behaviours you've started to pick up on, like checking that you've turned the hot plate off on the stove 3 times, or going to the car and going back to the house to make sure that you have locked the door. Forgetfulness, feeling overloaded or overwhelmed. Or maybe you just can't settle. You're busy with like a monkey mind and a monkey body jumping all over the place. And then there's mood swings that can come into play as well. Here again, there can be some overlap with those midlife symptoms of perimenopause. And what we do know, if you are stressed during perimenopause, then your symptoms will be far more severe. Moving on with the psychological symptoms of stress: loneliness, problems with relationships, feeling dissatisfied or unhappy with your work, having difficulty concentrating. Maybe you feel irritable more often than usual or restless. Maybe you're bored or find yourself just worrying or obsessing about different things in life. You may even feel guilty about choices that you've made, or you may just not even know why you feel guilty at all. These can all be symptoms of stress. There can be temper flare-ups, crying spells, nightmares, apathy, where you just don't really have an interest or care in the things that you used to. You might see some changes or experience some changes with your sexual drive. There could be a change in your weight, and there could be that habit of overeating creeping in as well. So a lot of symptoms here. Do you recognize any of these symptoms of stress? And if you're tuning in via audio today, I just want to let you know that the YouTube version of this episode does contain slides, so it's listing those different symptoms of stress. So you can always pop over to the YouTube channel and have a look at the slides as well. So picking up on those last few symptoms of stress, that overeating and possible change in weight, Maybe you find yourself just walking into the kitchen and gazing into the refrigerator or the pantry, looking at food, thinking, maybe I'll eat some of this, or perhaps not even conscious of any thoughts you have about the food in front of you. So, stress doesn't necessarily impact everyone's eating habits. Research suggests that about 50% of people will be impacted by stress when it comes to their eating habits. Half of those impacted will have a loss of appetite, whereas the other half will be driven to overeat. Research also shows that women are more likely to overeat due to stress than men. Men might increase their alcohol intake or other drugs, or even exercise more when they feel stressed. The other emerging research, which is really interesting, shows that each of us under stress will produce a different amount or increase in cortisol. And cortisol is one of the hormones that leads to body weight increases. As I've mentioned already, people tend to seek high calorie, high fat, and sugar foods during periods of stress. The other fact, though, is that when we're stressed, our bodies are more likely to store more fat than when we are relaxed. So, really important here, not only are those stress hormones encouraging us to eat more and eat higher calorie foods, the stress hormones are actually encouraging the body to store more fat as well. So, how do we move from stress eating to mindful eating? What's involved and how does this happen? A theme that's been coming out of my community with my clients recently is that stress is not necessarily identified as a reason for an overeating habit, often a snacking habit. One client recently explained that she finds herself in the kitchen mid-afternoon looking for something sweet. When we started unpacking what her life was like and whether there'd been any changes, she started talking about her to-do list. And when we looked at her commitments, a lot of the action points she had on that list were actual projects. So an example of this was when I was doing my research master's thesis and I had to write a plan to actually write up my research findings. And I remember sitting down with my supervisor, and of course the project was Sally Ann's research thesis, which was the dietetic practice guidelines for type 2 diabetes. But what we did is we looked at the framework that was required to write a thesis. We also looked at the themes coming out of my research, and we broke it into little chunks. And those little chunks are what became my action points. So when we write a task on our list of to-do, that it is a task and not an actual project. So if you had a list of projects, that would lead to overwhelm. What do we do when we feel overwhelmed? Well, we often want to move away from what's causing that feeling of overwhelm. So there's nothing better to do than remove ourselves from our desk or our chair and take ourselves into the kitchen. So for my clients, when they recognize that stress due to overcommitment or unrealistic deadlines for other areas in their life, what happens is that we take away that stress and the stress eating reduces. Relying on food to deal with stressful days can happen by another common pathway as well. I often hear, I've had a hard day, I need something to reward myself at the end of the day. So this is more of a conscious choice. It's not stress driving us into the kitchen to open the cupboard doors and the fridge doors. This example is partially acknowledging the stress that we've experienced in the day and then making a conscious choice of how to reward ourselves once the day is over. So in many ways, when we have that clearer picture of what's happening with our food choices, we can say, well, there's other things that I can do other than eat chocolate to take away those feelings of stress and to reward myself. So, looking at things that nourish us but are not food. The final source of stress for ladies in the Eating for You community I'm going to touch on today is the stress of wanting to be healthier, whether it's the stress of wanting to lose weight, the stress of reducing your blood sugar levels, the stress of lowering your cholesterol, the stress of wanting to improve your energy levels. And the list of health goals goes on. So, for many ladies that I work with, they've had a long history of dieting. That pressure, that restriction, that sense of guilt around food is really quite strong. So, anytime they're encouraged by their healthcare practitioner or even themselves to embark on a new way of eating, then there is stress, and stress is really, really overwhelming. And in many ways, that stress is a warning. What are you getting yourself into? But on the flip side, it can also become a very big barrier because the last attempt at dieting wasn't successful. Why would anything else work? So, stress can be tied up with these past experiences that we've had with eating that haven't been successful. So, it might sound counterintuitive that you want to do something positive for yourself, but you find it's stressful. And that's because, similarly with my master's thesis, we need to break it down into small chunks, but also set goals that are achievable and realistic and not related to the number on the scales. So, what I have found teaching mindful eating for a number of years now is that there are a few steps involved to understand our eating habits. And the first one is creating some space, a pause in your day to notice how you're feeling, to notice what your eating habits even are. Then you can start connecting with these different eating habits and understand why you have them. And it's through this observation of your drivers for eating. And I've spoken about the 9 Eating for You drivers for eating in other podcast episodes and other education events. Those 9 different drivers for eating are different for all of us. Once we know what's driving our eating, we can actually put strategies in place to start transforming them for good. And a big aspect of mindfulness is being kind and patient with ourselves and with others. So it is with patience and consistency that we will see the change in our eating habits. And I really like how Judy shared this on a recent podcast. She explained that mindfulness has infiltrated all areas of my life. I stress less, so there is less stress eating. So, a few reflection questions now. And I want you to read these out to yourself and make some notes. Am I eating in a way that honours my energy, my health, my goals, and my hunger? Do I make time to prepare nourishing food or even purchase pre-prepared nourishing food? Do I eat mindfully without distractions and taste my food? My clients always tell me that they know that they're eating mindfully when they can taste their food. So now let's talk about ways to reduce stress. Number 1 is prioritizing self-care. But self-care is different for everyone, and the different tools that you will use for your self-care will be different to somebody else's. My toolkit includes meditation, yoga, walking in nature, spending time with my horse. I'm a big one for 5 vegetables a day. 5 serves of vegetables a day for me can be the difference between waking up feeling re-energized or waking up feeling tired. establishing healthy boundaries. And what this really means is saying no. And this is a really important part of self care. And when I say saying no, it doesn't mean it's no forever, it's no in this moment in time. And that's why I always encourage my clients to put their self care activities, if they're a dedicated activity, into their diary, into their calendar or their journal, whatever they use to record their commitments. Because when someone says, "Can you do this for me at this particular time?" you can say, "Well, no, I've got another commitment. How about we do it at this other time instead?" If you find that you do have a lot of symptoms of stress and you're aware that you're stressed and feeling overwhelmed, maybe not sleeping at night, then I really do encourage you to talk to your friends and family or a healthcare practitioner, because in the long term, stress has a number of impacts on our health. It doesn't just potentially lead to weight gain, it can have direct impacts, as you saw, on things like blood pressure, blood sugar levels, and also our heart health. Finding relaxation techniques that work for you is really important. And I encourage my time poor female clients to see if you can combine a few things at once. So for me, walking in nature addresses both my physical and emotional, psychological health. So does doing yoga. So looking at things that work for you is really important. And what I really want to say about self care is that it's an attitude rather than an activity. Sure, we can have an aromatherapy bath, we can go for a walk, we can have a cup of tea or coffee or a smoothie, but it's how we do it and how we view that activity that produces the self care, that sense of nourishment. We can literally have a coffee on the run, or we can sit down and really savor that warmth of the coffee and the aromas. And of course, it's the smell of coffee that always draws me in. So don't think of self care as a long list of things you have to add into your already existing commitments and overfull calendar. That's not what this is about. It's acknowledging, as I said earlier, about wearing your hat and your sunscreen to protect your skin when you're in the sun. It's about cleaning your teeth and realizing that's important for you. So, doesn't necessarily have to be, a 2 hour hike every day or a 2 hour gym session. It's about finding little things that you can maintain and, most importantly, things that replenish you. So, some examples of self care is really valuing and prioritizing 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. And if you struggle with sleep, then I really encourage you to tune in to my earlier episodes with Rosemary Clancy. And I'll make sure the links to those are included with this episode's notes. As I've already mentioned, eating 5 serves of vegetables is a big one for me. A daily walk. And I remember working in one of my jobs where I had to catch a bus. What I did was I had a little walk at the beginning of the bus trip and a little walk after the bus trip. So it was just built in as active transport, not something extra in my day. Scheduling time to catch up with a friend is a biggie as well. And of course, seeking help from healthcare practitioners. And I have a number of Eating for You coaching programs that are available if you feel that embracing self care and mindfulness is important to you at this moment in time. So, self care is an attitude, not an activity. So, if you've been listening along and thinking, yes, I really do need to prioritize my health and well-being, then I have something very special for Women's Health Week, and that is an opportunity to obtain access to our self-care project. And this is really valuable if you're struggling to make time for yourself, you're not sure where you want to start, you want to feel healthier and happier, but you know that you need some support. So this project has online resources and personal journal, and it really encourages you to set those small goals, those really doable steps. The usual price for this project is $197. But for Women's Health Week, when you book an individual coaching call with me, then you will get the self-care project for free. I encourage you to book in a tapping in call. It's a 60-minute coaching call, and I call it a tapping in call because it taps into nutrition, eating habits, and your drivers for eating. So for just $197 for the coaching call, you will also get access to the self-care project. And my hourly rate is normally $250. So you're getting over $50 saving on that coaching call as well. And if you book in prior to September 8th, you'll get the self-care project for free. If you've enjoyed this episode today, share it with a friend. Please share it on your social media pages and leave us a comment. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week. We have a special guest, Tanya Graseski, joining us on the podcast to discuss spring eating and spring health from a Chinese medicine perspective.
You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If a long-term way of healthier eating is of interest to you, then make sure you subscribe to our podcast.